Voyager 1 did not find anything. That is the part most headlines skip past. Stories circulating right now say Voyager sent back coordinates to an unknown object somewhere in the dark between the stars. They suggest a destination, a point, a thing. But when you follow the actual telemetry stream coming back from that spacecraft, what you find instead is something stranger, and far less photogenic. Voyager did not point at an object. It pointed at a region where empty space stopped behaving like empty space. To understand why that matters, you have to remember what Voyager was built for. Voyager 1 launched in 1977 on a 4-year mission to photograph Jupiter and Saturn. It was engineered by people who expected to lose contact with it by 1981. The plutonium power supply was sized for a brief, brilliant crescendo of planetary flybys. Not for a 48-year silence drifting in the direction of nothing at all. And yet here it is. Still transmitting. Still listening. Further from Earth than any machine humanity has ever built. Imagine being the technician who still receives that signal. Imagine opening the daily telemetry packet and knowing that every bit of data is one of the last the spacecraft will ever send. That is the position Voyager 1 is in right now. It is operating near the bottom of its power budget. Its gyroscopes have been shut down. Its cameras were turned off decades ago, because there was nothing left to photograph in the dark it now inhabits. What Voyager is seeing is not light. It is pressure. Frequency. Magnetism. The invisible architecture of the medium between stars. And that is where the so-called coordinates come from. Not a camera. Not a pointing system locked onto a target. From instruments that measure the medium Voyager is moving through. Plasma wave detectors. Magnetometers. Cosmic ray subsystems. Devices that respond to environments, not objects. They do not say something is here. They say the space around me just changed. That distinction sounds technical. It is actually the entire point. Because most discoveries in space rely on light. A glint. A shadow crossing a star. A pixel of color that was not in the previous frame. Astronomy is overwhelmingly a visual science. It works because photons carry information across distance. Voyager does not have that option. It cannot see. It is 24 billion kilometers from home, flying in a direction where there are no bright suns, no reflective moons, nothing for a camera to resolve even if one were still operating. Every photon reaching its instruments is faint, scattered, and stripped of detail by the time it arrives. So Voyager senses a different way. It tastes the medium. It listens for vibrations in the plasma. It watches how its own trajectory bends in response to magnetic pressure from outside. When all of those measurements shift in the same direction at the same time, it is the equivalent of an explorer stepping from solid ground onto ice. The ground was a known medium. Ice is a different medium. Voyager has, repeatedly, stepped from ice into something else entirely. Repeatedly is the word that matters here. A single anomaly could be instrument noise. Two anomalies in the same region could be coincidence. But Voyager has now logged multiple shifts in plasma density, magnetic field strength, and energetic particle behavior along the same portion of its outbound trajectory. The pattern is not random. The pattern is structural. Something is happening in that region of space, and it is happening at a scale large enough that a single tiny probe, drifting at 17 kilometers per second, has been moving through it for years. What kind of thing persists for years across millions of kilometers without ever becoming visible? That is the question scientists analyzing Voyager's data are now asking. The leading answer is not an object at all. It is a boundary. Voyager crossed out of the heliosphere in 2012, past the bubble of solar wind that shields the inner planets from the harsher radiation of interstellar space. Since then, every measurement it has taken has been,
by definition, outside the protective envelope of our sun.
But outside is not the same as uniform. Interstellar space is not the featureless dark of science fiction. It has weather. It has pressure gradients. It has regions of denser and thinner plasma, separated by transitions that behave strangely like the surfaces of oceans. Waves roll across them. Edges press against each other. Local magnetic fields tilt in directions the sun's field never points. The region Voyager is now sampling appears to be one of those transitions. A pressure front. A density step.
A place where two interstellar mediums meet and create a measurable disturbance for everything passing through.
Nothing to see. Everything to measure.
The coordinates Voyager sent back were not lat-long readings on a hidden world. They were timing markers, the moments when the medium around the spacecraft shifted, and the instruments registered the change.
To put it plainly, Voyager is not announcing an object. It is announcing a coastline. And that coastline is not a metaphor. It is physical. Plasma on either side has measurably different temperatures. Magnetic field is oriented in measurably different directions. Cosmic ray flux is at measurably different intensities.
When Voyager crosses a boundary, every one of those numbers flips within the same hour.
That is how scientists know the transitions are real and not artifacts of an aging probe drifting through noise.
They feel them the way a sailor feels the water temperature shift beneath the ship's hull.
Not by looking. By everything else.
Voyager's 48-year journey feels less like a departure and more like a slow descent.
Layer after layer of medium. Boundary after boundary. Each one announced not by a photograph but by a quiet change in the numbers flowing back. The spacecraft is not sightseeing. It is sampling.
And the sample it has been taking for the last decade is stranger than anyone expected in 1977. What Voyager is doing, in plain language, is reading the weather of a place no human instrument has ever lived long enough to study.
It drifts. It records. It transmits. Every entry is a weather report from a coastline we cannot visit. The only reporter we have.
Strip away the magnetometers and the plasma wave detectors and you have a tin can broadcasting like a dim household appliance, 24 billion kilometers from home, listening for a sound it was never asked to listen for.
This hearing does not show up in photographs.
It shows up in spectrograms, in trace lines on a screen bending at frequencies set by the local plasma.
For years after the 2012 crossing, those trace lines had run flatter than predicted. Quiet. Steady. Then they did not. The first deviation was logged. A second followed, deeper in the same region. A third. The repeat was what convinced the science team this was not noise. The repeat is what convinced them this was a finding. And yet, it heard something. That is the part of the story that stops being a science update and starts being something heavier. Because the moment you accept that Voyager is hearing a sound, the question stops being about plasma and starts being about why we sent it out there in the first place. We sent it to look. To photograph. To swing past the giant planets and send back images of their faces. Its cameras were its reason for being.
When the cameras shut off, the mission did not end.
It changed shape. It became something less flamboyant and more haunting. A spacecraft with no eyes, still listening. Humanity tends to overvalue what its machines can see and undervalue what they can hear. Voyager cannot see the interstellar medium. It cannot see the structure of the boundary between mediums. But it can feel that boundary the way a deep-sea diver feels a thermocline, the way a climber feels the pressure drop at altitude. It is sensing, every second, a world that eyes will never visit because there is nothing to see. The universe is not just starlight. The universe is vibration. Frequency. Density. Texture.
Voyager may be one of the only instruments in human history that has spent a decade sampling the texture of a place that is, by definition, invisible.
Now take that thought and turn it around.
Voyager is 50 years old. Every instrument still operating is borrowed time, power drawn from a plutonium battery that decays a little more each year.
NASA has already turned off several systems to extend the mission's life. Each shutdown is a sentence removed from a paragraph we will never finish rewriting. The camera is gone.
The infrared spectrometer is gone.
The cosmic ray subsystem is half what it once was. What remains is bare bones. 2 major instruments. 2 ears, basically, listening to a sea they cannot see.
And when that signal finally goes dark, the golden record keeps moving.
Vinyl pressed in 1977. Greetings in 55 languages. The sound of a heartbeat. Songs with encoded instructions. The record rides onward, assuming a listener. The signal does not. The signal is the part that says we are still here. When the signal goes quiet, the spacecraft becomes a sealed letter drifting in an empty room. Heavier than any future message we will ever send. Possibly forever, unchanged, ever more so. And that brings us to the strange second discovery inside the first one, the thing Voyager was never designed to do but appears to be doing anyway. During a 2023 troubleshooting campaign, while engineers worked around a brief computer fault, the plasma wave instrument returned a signal that did not match anything in the predicted interstellar background. It was persistent. It was structured. It repeated on a cadence that sounded, to the scientists watching it through spectrograms, almost like a tone. Almost like a hum.
Almost like the medium between the stars was quietly ringing. That hum was not an object. It was the resonance of the plasma itself, vibrating at frequencies set by the local density and magnetic field strength of the interstellar medium Voyager is moving through.
Voyager was not built to map interstellar plasma resonance.
It stumbled into the capacity because the right instrument was still on, and the medium was producing the right cadence to register.
The discovery was an accident. The implication was not. The same happened at Jupiter flyby. Voyager imaged volcanoes on Io nobody had predicted. It photographed a faint ring system that should not have been visible at that geometry.
Every Voyager mission since 1979 has been a quiet chain of accidental discoveries stacked on the original goals.
The interstellar phase is unlikely to break the pattern.
It is just less photogenic, because the discoveries here are not things. They are textures.
Boundaries. Densities.
If the medium between the stars has a structure, and the repeated crossings of boundaries over the past decade strongly suggest it does, then the coastline Voyager has been announcing is not one coastline.
It is many. Stack upon stack of them. Boundaries within boundaries.
A quiet, invisible texture to the galaxy that no telescope has ever resolved, because telescopes resolve light, and this is not light.
This is shape.
And Voyager, by accident and by stubbornness, is the first and possibly only human instrument for the foreseeable future that is positioned to map it.
To put it plainly again, Voyager is not sightseeing.
It is not even sampling. It is sketching the unseen architecture of the Milky Way, one pressure step at a time, using instruments that were never designed for this work, on a power supply almost out of fuel, in a part of the galaxy where no replacement mission is funded, planned, or politically possible for at least the next 20 years.
The complication arrives at the moment you believe the story is settling.
In late 2024, telemetry from Voyager 1 began reporting an anomaly in the attitude control system.
Tiny at first. Persistent. Almost invisible in the stream of daily numbers.
The thrusters were firing unexpectedly.
The orientation of the high-gain antenna began drifting by fractions of a degree. Fractions that, at 24 billion kilometers, mean the difference between a clean signal and static. NASA engineers knew immediately what was happening.
The same fuel lines that had been steering the spacecraft for nearly 50 years were starving. The pipes were oxidizing. The spacecraft was running out of the one resource it could not manufacture more of, attitude control propellant. And the trade-off they faced was unsolvable. Either preserve the antenna alignment and risk losing the science instruments, or preserve the science instruments and lose the data stream entirely. The decision came in early 2025. NASA chose the antenna. Survive the platform. Lose the science. The plasma wave instrument, the magnetometer, the cosmic ray subsystem all would be cycled down before the spacecraft lost its ability to face Earth. Voyager would begin its final phase as a beacon. A pulse. Proof of life, with nothing left to beam back but the fact of itself. That is the complication. The machine that just taught us there is a coastline between mediums is being asked to go quiet on the coastline itself. Voyager is not leaving the region. Voyager is being silenced inside it. The listener is being muted, mid-sentence, in the middle of the passage it was built to hear. And every one of those instruments is, by 2024, an heirloom of another era. The engineers who built them are mostly retired already. The spacecraft has outlived its original team. It is being kept going by the next generation, on the fumes of an engineering culture that no longer exists in the same form anywhere outside this one mission. The mystery of the unknown object does not resolve into the discovery of something. It resolves into the recognition that nothing was the object all along. The space Voyager is moving through is the object. Every coastline it crossed was real. Every density step, every magnetic tilt, every plasma frequency shift, those were properties of the interstellar medium that the data captured for the first time in human history. And they will not be captured again for at least 2 decades, perhaps 3. By the time a successor mission is funded, designed, built, and arrives at the same outbound trajectory, the medium will have moved. The boundaries will have shifted. The texture will be different in ways no one can predict. Voyager's record is, by definition, singular. Voyager cannot be replicated. The chapter closes without a verdict. The listener will go quiet long before another window opens to repeat the survey. What does it mean that the most consequential listener humanity ever sent into deep space is now losing its voice? What does it mean that the listener is mortal? What does it mean that the medium it was built to sense was, in the end, the discovery? It means the medium between stars is no longer abstract. It is no longer the empty background of old textbook illustrations. It has structure. It has weather. It has coastlines. And the only reason any of us know this is because a probe designed to fail by 1981 kept failing to fail, listen one more decade in the dark, and chose the right cadence to register the shape of the unseen. That second by second, this spacecraft, a tin can the size of a small car, broadcasting with the brightness of a dim household lamp, has been sketching a map of a galaxy no telescope has ever resolved. Not by light. By texture. By density. By the smallest variations in plasma pressure that the human hand never built an instrument to detect. Voyager detected them anyway. Because it was still there. Because it kept listening. Because it did not know how to give up listening. It is the first time humanity has almost chosen silence this far from home, in a region we will not revisit for another 20 years, possibly longer. Humanity has been telling stories about the universe for thousands of years. Those stories almost always end the same way, with something out there watching us, sending signals back, expecting reply. Voyager's story does not end that way. Voyager's story ends with the universe not replying at all. With the universe being silent. But with the universe being less empty than we ever gave it credit for. The unknown object was always us. Humanity is the unknown object in this story. The species that built a tin can with failing thrusters and a dying battery, pointed a fragile dish at a coastline it could not see, and chose to listen anyway, for one more year, for one more set of numbers, because the alternative was to let the silence win. If this changed the way you think about the space between stars, about what empty actually means, and about who was listening quietly while the universe was busy being silent, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us.
Because what Voyager transmits in its last 2 years of operation is going to need its own video entirely.
The boundaries it is crossing right now may be the most important measurements any spacecraft has ever sent back.
And we have not yet begun to talk about what is on the other side of any of them.
What coastlines are we crossing this very moment, in our own lives and our own work, that we will not recognize clearly as coastlines until long after we have already crossed them?